Sorry for the intervention. Should I admit everybody that is waiting?
You can.
Okay, thank you.
And it's live. You can start.
Okay, Ms. Savastano, we're live.
Okay, thank you very much, Vladimir. Welcome everybody to the opening ceremony of the third edition of the Global MUN, which is the Model United Nations. I'm very happy to launch this third edition, successful edition online. The first one was last year when we were hit by the COVID, a successful edition that was conducted by the student for the first time last year, and replicated, unfortunately, I have to say, this year, but with a great success. We hope next year for the fourth edition to be able to go back to IFAD in the Italian room that was donated by the Italian government to the office of IFAD. In the meantime, we will continue this edition online. Without taking more time to this very intense morning, I would like to just say a few words, maybe the most important one before we start, which are the acknowledgement. We always used to forget who are the important people to be able to organize those type of events. And the two most important people today, together with all the speakers of this morning, are Antonella Del Prede and Vladimir. I'm sorry, Vladimir, I never know how to pronounce your last name, but everybody knows you, so you don't need introduction, for their tireless dedication to the organization of this event. Antonella as a staff of IFAD, but also as a former student of the Model United Nations. Vladimir for having launched it at the University of Rome Tor Vergata under the leadership of Professor Gustavo Piga. But in addition to Antonella and Vladimir Mijatovic, I'm sorry if I pronounce wrongly your name. I would like to thank the staff of IFAD, Mrs. Daniela Cuneo and Mrs. Federica Ferri for the technical support, as well as all the COM director and the team for their strong support. Of course, needless to say that the speakers of today are to be acknowledged, starting from Mr. Alberto Cogliati, who will welcome and open the third edition of the GMUN on the behalf of IFAD. Alberto Cogliati is the Director and Chief Risk Officer in IFAD's Office of Enterprise Risk Management and also member of the Executive Management Committee of IFAD. And prior to join IFAD, he was Director of the Central Bank of Italy. So Alberto has a strong experience both in the Italian government and within the international organization. So Alberto, the floor is yours to open the third edition of IFAD, and then the subsequent agenda will follow.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Dear students, distinguished guests, welcome to this third edition of the Global Model United Nations 2021, which is organized as previous editions by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. I am sincerely very honored to have the opportunity to welcome you all and to be part of this event. Actually, I have a little regret that we're not yet able to organize this third edition in person at IFAD as it would be customary, but circumstances unfortunately do not yet allow it, and we hope this will be something for the next edition. The Model United Nations, as you are all aware, is a unique Model UN conference program that offers participants unparalleled access to the United Nations context and process. It is a highly engaging, immersive experience in the world of international affairs, problem solving, diplomacy, and other important issues and disciplines. Global Model United Nations mission is to emphasize the need for cooperation among students and youth in general, and the importance that it carries as the participants build the relationships that become a community of knowledge and practice, articulating and strengthening an ambitious discourse on topics of global resonance. I think we are sincerely all aware that transitions and progress in the modern world are characterized by interconnection. And interacting with each other is what really builds up value, adding to the chances that we all become able to deliver adequate development, progress, the ending of hunger, and discriminations of all kinds. As we all know, this is an uphill path, and to be equipped with the right gear is absolutely essential. Global Model United Nations aims at giving all of us a chance for equipping ourselves with tools and instruments that can be of help for the client. Namely, it aims at allowing us to create more value by testing us on how we can be better capable to engage multilaterally with others in a multilateral context within a model of a multilateral process. Global Model United Nations was launched in 2019, as Sarah recalled, as part of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, signed and approved by the Executive Board in 2018 between IFAD and the Rome-based University Tor Vergata, Roma Tre, and La Sapienza. The first edition was held indeed in July 2019 at the headquarters of IFAD in Rome, with the participation of around 100 students, both from Italy and abroad. In 2020, despite the hardship caused by the pandemic, Global Model United Nations held its second edition in an online modality. This edition was a testament to what young people sharing the same values and convictions can achieve. The conference managed to secure participants from all the continents. We have now reached the third edition, which is seeing increased participation, with IFAD continuing to remain strongly and decisively engaged. The total number of accepted participants have raised to 150, and they come from 79 different nationalities. I find it very important and fascinating the representation, and which is very wide by regions, with Asia and Africa in the forefront. They both account for almost 60% of the representation by area. Participation and inclusion has seen an increase in female participation, with approximately 60% of all participants being female. For those of you who have not yet had the opportunity to deepen your knowledge of IFAD, allow me to just briefly introduce the institution I represent here today and its values. The International Fund for Agricultural Development is the only specialized global development organization exclusively focused on and dedicated to transforming agriculture, rural economies, and food systems. We target our support to reach the last mile and remotest areas, to help millions of rural people to improve their livelihood. It is a specialized UN agency and development finance institution active in approximately 100 countries. We provide loans, we provide grants, we provide technical assistance, and we have provided so far approximately $23 billion of financing. Our development objectives are informed by the UN values and by UN goals. We pursue the sustainable development goals that are interlinked trajectories to be achieved in the social, economic, and environmental context, whose informing and supporting value is the principle of universality. The paradigm of the developed countries assisting the underdeveloped ones is outdated. The UN development goals embrace all countries and all people. IFAD focuses in this context and under these assumptions on the poorest of the poor in the agricultural sector. We have a specialized development mandate, while some other agencies and institutions have a more general one. But we are all gathered under the strong commitments of interconnecting and interacting, the same principles and processes that stand behind the Global Model United Nations initiatives. IFAD's mission is to transform rural economies and food systems by making them more inclusive, productive, resilient, and sustainable. As I mentioned, rural people living in poverty and experiencing food insecurity in the developing countries are our target population. Food insecurity is not only a matter of productivity, and it does not always have only an economic and financial dimension. Our experience accrued in so many years is that there is so many people who are most likely to have little access to assets and opportunities due to social exclusion and marginalization, which in many areas touches not only women, young people, persons with disabilities, people living in fragile situations, but also indigenous people. An additional source of hardship is natural resource degradation and climatic change, which are threatening the viability of small-scale farmers, fishers, forest users, and rural producers across the globe. An increasing frequency and intensity of extreme climatic events is leading to large-scale biophysical, social, and economic losses, as well as losses of human lives. In rural settings, these impacts mean access to fertile land and usable water is becoming increasingly difficult for many small-scale farmers as competition for diminishing resources grows. Targeted investments in small-scale agricultural systems can have a disproportionately large and positive impact in the fight against climate change. Small-scale farmers are highly dependent on their land and ecosystems to maintain their livelihoods and are stewards of natural resources. Investments in sustainable and climate-sensitive interventions in the sector will enhance climate resilience and sustainability, as well as productivity and profitability. We think that there is a clear and manifest need for increased climate finance to low and lower middle-income countries to meet the demands of enhanced national commitments and needs in the rural sector. Global Model United Nations is in its third edition now, and it will bring to the table a series of committees that will discuss some of the most important contemporary international challenges, some of which, from the perspective of IFAD, I have tried to briefly outline. One of the committees that will discuss the various challenges on the table will be promoting the work of IFAD by simulating a body from its own organizational structure. This will enable Global Model United Nations participants to discuss and learn about topics pertaining to sustainable development, indigenous and rural youth, and the role of the Rome-based agencies, especially IFAD, in these areas. I would like to thank very much the students of the University of Tor Vergata for their active role over the years from the design of the event, its implementation, and its great success of today with, as I said, more than 150 online delegates that are kicking off the activities today until Friday, the 9th of July. I would like to conclude by giving now the floor to Professor Daniela Vuri, full professor of economics at the University of Tor Vergata, where she teaches microeconomics and labor economics. Her research field is very much in line with the topics that are of very much value for IFAD: labor economics, family and gender economics, and evaluation of public policies. Professor Buri, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody. I'm very honored to have been invited to the opening ceremony of the third edition of GMUN, the Global Model United Nations 2021. As has been already said, GMUN is an event taught to help young professionals to form a community of knowledge and develop their personal skills, at the same time learning about the United Nations system. GMUN can be considered as an excellent example of how cooperation between universities, in this case Tor Vergata as founder, but also La Sapienza and Roma 3, and international organizations like IFAD can be very fruitful. The most impressive characteristics of GMUN is that it is run entirely by students, and it has three clear goals in its mission that are particularly valuable. The equal access to opportunities, the interdisciplinary learning, and the academic cooperation. As already Sarah mentioned, the first GMUN was held in 2019 when a group of students of the bachelor's degree in global governance at the University of Tor Vergata organized the event at the headquarters of IFAD. After the closure of last year, the students didn't give up and organized the 2020 event online, like this year, unfortunately, I have to say. Needless to say that as Prorector for Research of my university, I'm very proud that this event was launched by and taught by our students, because it witnesses that our intellectual environment is lively and fruitful of ideas, but also that our university, in this case, in the person of Professor Piga, the coordinator of global governance, is able to support the students to develop their ideas. The success of GMUN is in its numbers. More than 200 youth and students reached by GMUN, more than 500 applicants, and 48% of female participants in the previous edition that now I think increased to 60% with the figures of this edition. And this last number is particularly important because the participation of young and able women must be strongly encouraged in our days, in any fields and in any context. Despite the fact that we are not out of the pandemic yet, what the students are doing, organizing the event online once again, represent an example of resilience that all of us should appreciate. My hope for the future is that these types of initiatives promoted and run by students become the normality in our world, because we need enterprising and motivated students able to work in a global context. I think I have already taken much of your time and you are probably eager to start. So I stop here and I wish you 3 intense and productive days. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for your opening notes, and also Alberto for your opening remarks on the behalf of IFAD and on behalf of the 3 universities of Rome. So before I introduce our keynote speaker, I would like to just say a few words, background information to the students and also to the members representative of the university and to all the participants to this opening session about the activities that IFAD is conducting in the area of research and university collaboration with the 3 departments of Rome. As you know, and as has been said, this Global Model United Nations is part of the activities that are summarized in the memorandum memorandum of understanding that IFAD signed with the three Department of Economics of the public universities of Rome, so La Sapienza, University of Rome, Tor Vergata, and Roma Tre University, but also with IFAD, which is the Italian Center for International Development. It is hosted at CES in Tor Vergata. And so I would like to thank Gustavo Piga from Tor Vergata, and also leader of the Global Governance Program of the university, Pierluigi Montalbano representing La Sapienza, Furio Camillo Rosati representing IFAD and the University of Rome Tor Vergata, and finally Silvia Nenci representing Roma Tre, for their support and their participation today as in the opening remark. What the memorandum of understanding was approved by the board of IFAD, the representative of the member states, as some of the committee that you have or you will be organizing, and as part of the United Nations model. The board representative are those who are leading the policy ideas that the policy item that will be discussed and will be implemented in international organization. The objective of the Memorandum of Understanding that was agreed in 2018 were to establish network of experts, to promote collaborative research between the three universities and IFAD, to organize workshops and seminars, and to generate knowledge and joint teaching and training activities. In 2019, so less than a year after the memorandum was signed, Gustavo Pica approached me with this idea of hosting the Model United Nations with the attribute of global for the program he was leading at the university. And I was very happy to support this activity together with the remaining, as activities of the Memorandum of Understanding. But also extremely important, in 2019, IFAD started to partner with IFAD and La Sapienza and Roma Tre and Tor Vergata in the organization of the Summer School on Impact Evaluation of Development Policies, a summer school that has reached its third edition in 2021, and with an active participation of master and PhD students. Today, I am happy to announce a new activity that is part of the Memorandum of Understanding, a small grant program to write research papers on projects and program evaluation in the areas of interest, not only of IFAD, but also of the sister organization in Rome, AFAO and WFP. And those are about income generation, agriculture production, market access for small-scale producer, as well as climate change, gender, nutrition, and food security. And I'm very sorry that unfortunately, Ambassador Le Monaco, who was supposed to be the second keynote speaker today, is not able to attend the opening remark because it is thanks to a general contribution, a supplementary fund from Italy that IFAD received, that we're able to launch this grant program with for students from the universities in Rome and in Italy. There will be a call for paper issued in September, and papers selected will be presented at the international conference in June 2021. Given the importance of evaluation for development effectiveness, the recent performance of IFAD in the evaluation approach in the quality for ODA index, the importance of evaluation that has been testified also by the Nobel Prize to Esther Duflo and colleague, I hope that this new activity will launch a new era of excellence in the area of evaluation of development effectiveness with the three universities of Rome, and hopefully also with our sister organization, WFP and FAO. Speaking about which, I would like to introduce the keynote speaker of today, Maximo Torero, the chief economist of FAO. But before I introduce him, I just want to make sure that he is connected. Maximo, Vladimir, can you confirm that Maximo is connected? No.
So, Mr. Torero, if you're with us, just open the mic.
And let me send him a text message.
Maybe he's here and he's renamed with my name. Is Vladimir?
I've contacted all the people with the same names already.
I saw him at 10, so maybe is trying
Let
to
me say,
reconnect.
in the era of COVID and Zoom meeting, overlapping Zoom meeting, it's impossible to be present everywhere at the same time. And I struggle myself to connect, as I guess everybody struggle. So let's just wait 1 minute because I'm texting him to check whether he can connect. Or Antonella, maybe you can call quickly Paola Persi.
Yes, sure.
You can and make sure that he connects. I think this is something, it was beautiful to be able to connect the whole world through Zoom when the COVID started, because it was a way of being together and being strong. But to tell you the truth, I start suffering about this Zoom life where you survive if you have clones that are able to attend to meetings that you are supposed to attend. So I guess this is what happened also with Maximo. Maybe we can do something rather than, we can start maybe with some remarks by the 3 representatives of the university in Rome while waiting for Maximo to connect. And then as soon as he's going to be connected, we're going to give him the floor, because I assume that his time will be limited to the presentation. So maybe representing University of Rome La Sapienza, Professor Pierluigi Montalbano, do you want, can you start your remarks?
I can see
Maximo. Okay, yes. Maximo is here. So happy that Maximo was able to connect. So let me just introduce him quickly, even though for those who know all the development economics and international organization know him already. So Maximo Torero is an economist, and through his career at multilateral organization and global research institution, he has provided intellectual and strategic leadership to translate research into policy by fighting poverty. Maximo is the chief economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in Italy, and we are very lucky to have him here as a keynote speaker. Before joining FAO in 2019, he served at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. as executive director for Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. And for 10 years, until 2016, he led the Market, Trade, and Institution Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute, also in Washington, D.C. He's a professor at the University of Pacific Peru. He's currently on leave, and Alexander von Humboldt Fellow at the University of Bonn in Germany. Maximo has published more than 40 peer-reviewed academic articles, and is also author of 14 books, where he analyzed poverty, inequality, and behavioral economics in top journals, including Quarterly Journal of Economics, Econometrics Theory, American Economic Journal, Applied Economics, Review of Economics and Statistics, and Journal of Labor Economics. Maximo, thank you very much for finding the time to be with us in this Model United Nations. And I know that you have always many commitments, but thank you so much for being here and for your presentation. The floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your kind words. How much time I have so I control my time? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, so thank you so much for allowing me to be here today with you. And what I will do is I will try to find a way in which I can explain you a little bit what we are aiming and how we are trying to bring you. If you allow me a second, let me bring up my presentation, and I will try to be as practical as possible. So first, let me tell you that I am extremely happy to be together with you. I think the Model UN is something of huge importance. As all of you know, FAO has a youth committee, which I chair, and we are working together with all of you to create the movement of transformation that we need with the youth. That's the World Food Forum, which the big meeting will happen in October, but there is a whole process. So I invite you to link in the World Food Forum. Now, why is so important the change that we're looking for? So today we are facing huge challenges, and on Monday we're going to launch our new SOFI, our state publication, the flagship publication of FAO and UN agencies, IFAD, WFP, UNICEF, and WHO, where we bring the latest numbers of chronic undernourishment and all forms of malnutrition indicators, and also try to bring some neat changes that are supposed to happen and are going to happen to change how we are evolving today. This is of extreme importance because it will really bring how much COVID-19 has exacerbated even more the situation that we were living already. So the major drivers that we have identified already, which you don't need to be a genius to identify them, are basically climate, which is affecting the climate not only in extreme temperatures, but also in variability, conflict, which most of the food crisis countries are in conflict, and slowdowns and downturns, meaning recessions. COVID-19 is basically creating a huge economic recession and exacerbating inequalities. And also, of course, we have the issue of access to healthy diets, which is a consequence of those core drivers. But if you look at them carefully, they are pretty complex. No? Conflict not only combines issues that could be related to certain fundamentals, but also is issues related to policy, to geopolitical issues, which makes it even more complex to be able to resolve a problem of undernourishment and food insecurity. Also, climate is something that we cannot control, although we can cope, although we can change policies and we can try to minimize the trade-off that we generate on the environment today. And recessions, like shocks like the ones we observe of COVID-19, which are completely uncertain. So there is a difference between uncertainty and risk. In risk, we know the distribution probability of the consequences and the event to happen. That's why we can insure risk. In uncertainty, we don't know the probability distribution, so that we cannot insure uncertainty. And COVID-19 was an uncertain shock. Still today, we don't know all the potential impacts and the costs that we will imply. So it makes things more difficult. So we have a world where undernourishment is increasing. There is an enormous spike that is happening because of COVID-19. We previously estimated up to 132 million more people going into undernourishment. But this spike will affect the potential trend that we have to 2030. And we have a world where natural resources are exploited to a maximum. We have a world with variability because of climate. And we have a world with huge inequalities and a world where we could have these uncertain shocks that could change significantly the way we operate. And just recall your life 1.5 years ago and how things were before COVID-19. So in this very complex world, what we should do and how we need to react. And that's where the youth have to play a role, but not only the youth, of course. In FAO, youth for us is youthfulness. So basically, I am considered youth because despite of my age, I still think, I hope, and have youthfulness ideas. But the idea here is how we can create this enormous transformation so that we can really try to change what we are observing, at least to change the trend of increasing undernourishment, of increasing stunting, of increasing lack to access to healthy diets. Today, 3 billion people don't have access to healthy diets. And we know that if we access healthy diets, we are also going to improve our environment. So, and we are also going to reduce non-communicable diseases and therefore save an enormous amount of money. So we need to think very carefully how we can handle those things and how we can manage those situations and what we can do. And everybody has a role to play. And it's not to tell the youth now you are responsible because you are the youth. Therefore, you have all the responsibility over your arms. We are free. We create a mess, but we are free. That's not the idea here. The idea is how we can work together and how we can create interlinkages so that we can move forward. So with that concept, I want to show you some slides of potential ideas where I believe you can help us. So first, let me start that the whole core of my logic here is how we can science meet policy to boost food system transformation and how we can create this change in policy. So the first thing that we need to understand is that the agri-food system in which we live today is a very complex system. It's a system which has a lot of interlinkages. This is an oversimplified picture. If you look in the Google and search for food systems, you will see tons of different complex pictures with lines right and left and so on and so forth. But we need to understand that at the core, we have income and employment, we have agriculture and individuals, markets and consumption. And those are related and linked to ecology and climate systems, to science and innovation systems, to economic and governance systems, and to health systems. All those are interrelated. Normally, we used to operate in silos. While, for example, indigenous people operate more holistically. If you look at indigenous people, we just published a book on indigenous people food systems. They operate more holistically. They look at the whole system, and based on the system, they try things. And they try to see how they can change to adapt to climate, to weather, to soils, to different conditions. Although they don't go deep in science, like the the science groups, that they try to be more metric, more causal, trying to identify and measure. Now, imagine if we combine both, no? The holistical approach with the scientific approach that goes vertical, while the other is more horizontal. That's the complexity of where we need to move, and that's why it's so important to understand that. Because at the end of the line, my objective function today is SDG 1, poverty, SDG 2, undernourishment, and in our case, inequalities. Why? And the logic is, if I really want to move people out of extreme poverty and I really want to move people out of undernourishment, it needs to be sustainable. And the only way it will be sustainable is if we reduce inequalities. And if you look around the world, there is very little policies to reduce inequalities. Serious thinking on how we can reduce inequality, despite all the massive literature showing that inequality is increasing in the world, and COVID-19 has shown that how important it is. Now, if that is my objective function, I have different pathways of what I can do to achieve that objective function. Okay, I can go, for example, through crop intensification, or I can go through agroecology, or I can go through biotechnology. But any of those pathways to achieve that goal in 2030 will have consequences, will have what we call trade-offs. Could also have synergies, but it will have trade-offs on water, on soil, on land, on biodiversity, on greenhouse gas emissions, on land distribution, on income distribution. And that's why we need to understand those complexities to be able to measure the potential impacts. Now, what are the core elements that we believe are behind and where you can play and the work you do can play a role? And this is what we call the accelerators. We believe that data plays a crucial role. We believe that technology plays a crucial role. We believe that innovation will play a crucial role. But any of those three accelerators can move very fast. You have seen what happened in digital technologies during COVID-19. E-commerce moved very quickly, or it could be moving very quickly. Use of digital technologies expand everywhere, okay? It created some trade-offs, but it expanded. But what it also did is increase inequalities. And I can feel it. On the urban area, I am in Italy, I don't have an Italian cellular phone, okay? I still have my old American phone. Now, I felt completely excluded because I could not even buy food online because I didn't have an Italian number. Now, imagine people that cannot really have access to electricity. I cannot have access to cellular phone. In my case, it was a choice. In their case, there is no option. There is a restriction. So if you are in that condition, this innovation exacerbates that inequality. So for that, we need the complements. And the complements is central because it's where we have governance, where we have institutions, and where we have human capital, build capabilities. Because if the only asset that as an individual you will have is your human capital. And that's why sharing your knowledge and what you learn could help to create this inclusion and this reduction of inequalities. And governance and regulation will be central. So it's not just innovate and technology. It's what are the institutions we need in place to assure that that innovation, technology, and data are inclusive, even data. The problems we are observing on data and why we have all these policies of data privacy and data security is that big companies are controlling data of individuals. And based on that, they are driving your decisions. And a very simple way to look at that is to look at your cellular phone. You are searching for something, and the next day you have a lot of offers jumping into your cellular phone. That's how data is being manipulated today. And that's what we need to find ways to avoid. And that's where the governance play. And this is crucial in rural areas. Because if we want to resolve the problem today, where most of the poor are, which is in rural areas, we need to touch agriculture. There is no other way. But still, the big IFADs and the big agencies don't understand that. They talk about a green recovery, but they don't say green on what. They don't say that they need to go through rural areas. They don't say that they need to do the transformation of the agricultural system. So it's really important to look at that and to try to understand. Now, let me give you some concrete examples of this interlinkage. This is the case of GMO, so genetic modified crops. This is a meta-analysis study, okay? Everybody criticizes GMO, but this is evidence. This is based on science. So you have 200 studies. These are the results in average. A yield increase, pesticide use being reduced, farmer profit increase. Now, is this the complete story? No. Why? Because the complements are important. We need to understand what are the trade-offs of these technologies. We need to understand what are the complements that are needed if we decide as a government to use those technologies, and we need to understand what is the institutions that we need if we decide to use those technologies. But at least we have some evidence. We need to complement the evidence. But we cannot say no without looking at the science behind. We need to look at the results and trying to analyze when it works. The same with gene editing. That's a huge push now for gene editing. But again, we need to understand that. And I can go to the other extreme, agroecology. That is a big push today. There is some evidence that agroecology could increase incomes of farmers. The question is incomes relative to what? Incomes relative to what they had before, or incomes relative to the biotechnology that they can use to create the change. And that's where we need also to improve the solid evidence, because it could be they are not substitutes to each other. It could be depending on the needs and the regions, you can complement each other. Again, the question here is, what are the trade-offs? What are the needed complements for this to work? So the point I'm trying to make is that extremely important that you become systematic thinking and analytic on dimensions of innovation, technology, data, and science. One clear example that we have on data today is that we were asking at the beginning of COVID-19 that we needed data real time to measure food insecurity. Because our hypothesis was that the new hotspots because of COVID-19 were different to the traditional hotspots of food insecurity. Now that we were able to collect the data, despite all the problems we have to fundraise for that data, we have shown that in countries, the new hotspots are very different to the traditional hotspots. And most of the investment of governments in transfers has gone to the traditional hotspots. Again, a big problem of not targeting properly the interventions. And the major example of this is Latin America. If you look at Latin America, the level of food insecurity has increased substantially. In my country, Peru, which was a middle-income country. And the reason for that is that all the transfers that were boosting to the system were going to the incorrect people and not to the new hotspots of food insecurity, which in our case was the peri-urban areas because of the closures for more than a year, which completely destroyed the informal economy and the services systems. And those people that used to have an income, which even put them in middle class, despite they were informal, in Latin America, informality is 54.4%, in Peru, 70%. Those people are losing their incomes for more than a year. Therefore, they liquefy the working capital. They don't have access to financial services. And today they are facing huge challenges of food insecurity. The second point that I want to bring is the case of information and how important science information is. This is the case of Ethiopia. Ethiopia has something called the Ethiopia Transformation Agency. And the Ethiopia Transformation Agency found that the fertilizers that were used in their fields and they were pushed to farmers at a cost, of course, were not really responding to the needs of the soils that they had in the 20s. The map of soils that we're using was from the 70s. And therefore, the combination of NPK didn't match the reality of their soils. So they immediately reacted to that because basically you are asking a smallholder farmer to increase and to use these fertilizers, pay your little money that you have, and then you don't have, as you can see here, any increase in yields or a minimum increase in yields. Not what you expect. You lose your liquidity, you adopt a technology that they are telling you, and the technology was really useless. So at the end, you have a negative effect. So they decided to build a new soil map, and that's what they call the theosis. And this new soil map was to detail and functional soil fertility for Ethiopia, which was instrumental to improve fertilizer recommendations and agricultural policy reforms. It created a huge change. And then the policy came to create the blending plant to provide the combination of NPK and other micronutrients that the soil needs so that really a farmer that has so restricted resources can get the returns for their investment. If we need to have precision farming, that is with the smallholder farmers, because they don't have money and they need to use the resources the most effective way. So we need to change the way we are thinking in this type of elements. Now, the third element that I want to show you of how technology and how all what you learn can be used. This is the case of locusts, which we have been through a huge problem and is still on locusts, especially in the south part of Africa or in the east part of Africa. And what we learn in locusts, FAO has been working in locusts for a huge time, is that we can improve with technology the way we predict how locusts will spread. Now we are bringing soil moisture, climate predictions, mitigation models, so we can react in advance, predict in advance, and minimize the cost. Again, another way in which this interface between science, data, and technology can really change policies and can really improve how effective we operate in the world to be able to measure things in the best possible way. So today we are a lot more prepared. FAO worked since the 70s or early in locusts, but we were not able to bring all this together, and we have it together now, which allow us to have significant predictive power. This is one of our best early warning systems that we have now. The third example is on policies. You know, when we have crises like COVID-19 or any commodity crisis like the food crisis in 2007, 2008, the first thing that countries do is to try to put export restrictions. And then we start talking about local value chains and forgot about global value chains. This is the case of rice in the 2007, 2008 food crisis. If you look at the labels of all the policy restrictions and trade restrictions, you will see the correlation between the increase and the exacerbation of increasing prices. This is a lesson learned. We know that this type of policy will create a mess, but we keep doing it. Thanks God, in COVID-19, we were able, with information from AMIS and many efforts on joint letters on the principals on different agencies, to make countries at the beginning of the COVID-19 to move backwards and to avoid putting export restrictions, because the only thing they will do is to create a food crisis when there is no need to have a food crisis. And finally, the issue of interlinkages and trade-offs. This is central. If we have an objective function, as I mentioned, we will have trade-offs. There is no option we won't have trade-offs. There is no policy that I will do that won't affect something or somebody. So we need to measure those trade-offs. We need to understand them, and we have not been doing that. And measuring the trade-offs and synergies is the best way to create a system approach. Now, to measure the trade-offs, we need a common metric. So we need to monetize in, for example, here, 3 dimensions: environmental space, social performance, and economic performance. And that will allow me, if I have a common metric, to be able to compare them. But it's not only the same time horizon. The problem is that the complexity applies to multiple time horizons. So I can have research and development that could take longer to get the profits. I know it is profitable, but I need to bring the present value. I can have crop intensification that could have a shorter return. I can have switch to healthy diets that I know will reduce NCDs, but that will take longer. So we need also to have an intertemporal allocation and proper discount rates to be able to compare them and to prioritize them. So the point I'm trying to make, and I hope I can transfer this message, is that we have problems. We have important problems, and the problems has grown. But we need to bring as much evidence. It's not just an issue of talking. It's not just an issue of keywords, which is a nightmare for us. Keywords everywhere. It's an issue of creating the change, an issue of looking at evidence. Because if we don't do it properly, what will happen is this little problem will become a bigger problem. Because the solutions that we brought are not appropriate for the problem we're trying to tackle. And instead of solving the problem, like in the case of prices, we are exacerbating the problem. And if we are not serious about this, a little problem can end being a huge problem. And I can keep going and going on this. So again, my point is, you can play a role. You are not alone. Always think in the interrelationships, think on a system approach, and try to bring as much science, data, and evidence as possible to support the process that we need to do. But your voices and the change that you're trying to bring is crucially important, because we need a lot of solutions out of the box. And we, as old people and old institutions, we have a traditional way of thinking. And we need a disruptive way of thinking to be able to create the change that we need. Thank you so much, and sorry if I took longer.
Thank you very much, Maximo. And I'm very sad that the Zoom does not allow some applause, at least sound, because it was a very good presentation. And I'm very happy that you were here representing also the other Rome-based agencies in Rome and presenting ideas for development and agricultural development that are common for all of us. And also for presenting ideas from the SOFI that will be launched, and an exercise, a report that has been printed jointly by the institution and will be launched next week. So because I know that you're very busy, and even though the Q&A should have been taken place later, I suggest that we have 10 minutes of question and answer just to give you the opportunity to reply and to give some voice to the students and to the youth. But before we give the voice to them and also to my colleague from the university, former colleague from the universities in Rome, let me ask you one question, Maximo. I mean, this is something I'm struggling a lot, and it's based on your initial slides and the last slides. I mean, finding solutions and I mean the right solution. And also at the beginning, when you were talking about the drivers for the change, at least in terms of the food system. Maximo, how can you solve the problem of timing? The optimum time, and that in the, you know, in the at the end, COVID is just Dixit and Pindike investment under uncertainty. So how we plan for the best investment in the future in the area of the food system, given the uncertainty. And what is uncertainty? Let's take the example of technology and digital innovation, okay? So you need technology, you need digital innovation, but at the same time, you need the infrastructure to allow connectivity. How can you do when you have a mismatch in the timing of the implementation? So regulation takes a long time to be implemented. So hopefully you open for digital technology to be introduced in the countries, but the cost of technology is too high. So the poorest of the poor is not affordable. You need connectivity, so you have to build a road. By the time it takes to build a road and to connect a remote rural village to the center and to the city is large, and that's when you would like to transfer goods. How you can still solve this last mile, which is in any case an important issue of development, and how can you make all the institutions working together to solve this problem? So this is my question, and then we're going to give the floor to the others.
Okay, so I think the concept that we need to have in our heads very clearly is that we are not in 0 and 1, black and white. We are in a continuum. Okay, if we keep thinking on 0 and 1, then we will never solve a problem, because we always will like to have 1, which means the roads, the potable water to everybody, and so on. But that's impossible. Okay, over the night you cannot do that. But we have a continuum. And in that continuum, we need to find the way and the optimal pathways that we need to follow to achieve the best result that we can, given that situation. So let me go one by one on your complex question. First, in terms of uncertainty, okay? Today, we have a huge risk of uncertainty. And remember, I make the difference between risk and uncertainty. Risk, you know the distribution of probability. That's why I can insure. Uncertainty, I don't, okay? COVID-19 was an uncertain event. Nobody expected that to happen in the magnitude it happened. Now, for uncertainty, the only solution I have is increased resilience. And that means increased resilience of the whole system, not only of the households. Why? Because when an uncertain shock happens, it will, for example, affect my income. Today, it could have affected 20% of my income, 30% of my income. So what happens if I today take 30% of your income? Can you cope with that? How you can cope with that? What will be the consequences? Okay. The more you can cope with that means that you have savings, for example, and means that you can be more resilient to that uncertain shock. The same applies to your network of roads, like in logistics, for example. What we found in logistics in the world is that the agricultural sector was pretty resilient. They found ways to cope with the logistical problems, being the most important ones, the mobility of vessels. Okay, they found solutions. But we also have the level of resilience in terms of how I procure my food in the world. If I am a country that is only procuring from one country and there is a problem of logistics to import from that country, then that's it. The shock destroys me. Even if I am on the contrary, I am a self-sufficient country and I got a localized shock in my country, my self-sufficiency is over. So the more diverse way you have the sourcing of your food, the more strategic you are, the better is your resilience. So in a world of an uncertainty like the Pindyck and Rubin field, what you need to do is the state of the world and attach probabilities of events to that state of the world. And that allows you to measure how resilient you will be. So that's central. Now, the other element which is central is how you sequence policies, how you sequence interventions. So it's not just to build a road. Everybody talks about e-commerce, but to have e-commerce, you need to have the network for sure. You need to have the platform. You need to have mobile money, and you need to have the capacity to move commodities. If you don't have the capacity to move commodities, then your e-commerce platform won't work, because it's not only selling virtually, it's moving the commodity physically to another location. So if I am going to develop a hub of e-commerce, I better have those 4 dimensions, and I better put the institutionality behind. Now, things take time, and that's why the continuum is something that we need to think. Look, commodities can be moved, no matter I don't have roads. People will walk. People will find a way to get. It will take 10 hours more, okay? But you will move. What you are doing by upgrading the roads is just reducing that time that you take. And that's a continuum. The more we can do, the better it will be. So you don't need to wait the 5 years to build a new freeway. You can start improving partially things so that you can have the access. And finally, the issue of on this timing. So again, it's important to see how the complementarities work of the different interventions and how I can optimize those complementarities so I can get what I want. But here in regulation, especially, we can leapfrog a lot. We can learn a lot from other countries, and we don't do that too much. I don't need to go in a country, for example, to create a law of mobile money that started in a very poor country where it was successful, M-Pesa, in Kenya. I don't need to copy exactly that law. I can learn from the problems of that law. And one of the problems of that law, for example, is that they use cellular phones as a way to create liquidity for the mobile money. If I'm going to implement the law in another country, I will say, okay, what other company I can use to create a liquidity? In my case of Latin America, bigger companies are perfect. Then you create more competition. But I leapfrog enormously from the experience of Kenya. And in many topics, we can leapfrog enormously so that we don't waste the 5 or the 7 years that others already invested to create this type of a law. Now, most of the digital technologies and the deployment of fiber optics not have to be done by individuals or by private sector. That's a role for the governments to play. And the cost is very low to deploy fiber optics. The problem is the governments can invest in the deployment. The issue is the last mile. And for that, you have to accelerate competition. And that's where we can leapfrog from other realities. So again, my major response is 0 and 1 is not correct. The continuum is the correct way to think. And then marginal improvements in that continuum is what will really pay back to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Maximo. And you open and you launch also ideas to really invest a lot in evidence-based meta-analysis, something that also the universities could do. Because when we talk about the SDG, sometimes we forget the SDG 17, which is partnering with the civil society, the university, the academia, to improve knowledge, and in this case, to generate evidence for important policy reform that we have to promote. So Vladimir, sorry, I'm not pretty sure how the question and answer works, but can you please just let me know whether there are questions from the floor from Maximo or also from the professor from the universities?
Yes, we have questions. We have collected some questions. For the sake of time constraints, we're going to ask the questions on behalf of the participants.
Okay.
Okay, so Luana, take it away.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you to all of the guest speakers. I'm Luana Golemi, and so we have 2 questions by our chairpersons. The first one is by Paula. Here's the question for Mr. Maximo. What do you consider are some of the incentives that the private sector needs in order to invest in agricultural technologies, in particular in the telecommunication sector, in order to expand the internet access to the rural populations so that they can have access and develop climate-smart agriculture? So, Mr. Maximo, if you prefer, I can also read to you the second question, and then you can answer freely.
Yes, please.
Okay, the second question is by our other chairperson, Mayuri. She asked, unorganized sector acted as great absorber and provider of employment. But due to the pandemic, the unorganized sector lost its momentum due to shutdown and other regulation. Is pushing employee up the ladder from unorganized to organized the only way to overcome the crisis? Excluding the monetary infusion done by governments, considering the time constraint. So how can we analyze this with past events such as past pandemics or conflicts, etc.? These are the two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me start with the second one and then I move to the first one. So what we have observed from COVID-19 is that economies that have significant level of unorganized employment, which I assume you are referring to informal economies. When you are informal, meaning that you don't have access to insurance, health insurance, you don't have access to unemployment insurance, you don't have access to social security, and your business is not formal. It's a continuum again, it's not discrete and the definition can vary. Now, what happened in those sectors, which mostly are sectors in peri-urban areas, or rural sector is normally kind of an informal, especially in developing countries, but they know how to handle and they have the local market. So the lockdowns not necessarily affected them because they keep operating. There was no way to control in rural areas if they were going to local markets or not. But in urban areas, yes. No, you have the military out, locking out the whole urban and peri-urban sector. And that creates a huge problem for the unorganized and informal economy. Huge, huge. The best example I have seen is Latin America, as I mentioned before. What you observe in Latin America is a significant increase on poverty. And the increase in poverty as a result of COVID-19 is mostly by a shrinking of the middle class, because this informal sector had significant income to become middle class. They were not poor, they were middle class. And that piece of the middle class shifted completely to poor. Now, the second problem, and one of the best examples is Brazil, where Brazil expanded enormously their cash transfer program. So basically what they did is they multiplied the amount of money given to individuals that were in their listings so that they were not affected by this kind of shock. But when we look, and even as a result of that, is poverty in Brazil, official poverty in Brazil reduced during the COVID-19. Now, if we look at food insecurity, it increased substantially. Why? Because they were not targeting these middle-class people that were losing all their income, and therefore they won't be able to move. They didn't move to poverty, but they were facing significant periods of food insecurity. So again, the targeting issue is really important. Now, what is the conclusion and the lesson learned from this? First, I think we had a huge missed opportunity, because if we use the support from governments, the safety net support during COVID-19 to formalize this informal economy, could have been a huge incentive for them to be formalized, because it will have allowed them to not only to be able to have access to transfers, but also to have access to the financial system. So that opportunity, I think, is gone, but we have to learn from it, and we need to find ways in which we can formalize these economies. The second is that formalization, again, is not a 0 and 1, and we can have a continuum. Let me give you a concrete example. My country developed a rural labor law. Peru and most Latin American countries and most developing countries have labor laws that are designed for urban areas. And therefore, the expected severance payment, all the labor costs that companies have to pay are very high. Very different to the US, when you can hire and fire as the economy goes. It's very difficult to fire and hire. Now, in a commodities like agriculture, which are seasonal, employment is needed for certain periods of time. So what they did is they changed that complex law, very costly to hire, to create labor demand, into a law that was more adjustable to the seasonality. Therefore, an employee can work for one crop with one company and for another crop that have a different season with another company, and he will become formal.
Maximo, for some reason you went on mute in the last sentence. Yeah.
So he will become formal, and therefore he will get access to financial system. It ended in the coast of Peru in full employment. So it really resolved a significant problem where we have a seasonal sector, and the law was customized to respond to that reality of agriculture. So we need to learn from these ideas. It not necessarily means that this is the solution to the world, but it means that there is options and flexibility that governments need to learn to be able to do that. Because that's the only way we will formalize this economy, and we will have more resilience for them. Like what happened in Europe, no? You have unemployment insurance, so people could keep saving. And you have Social Security. After a period of time, you move to Social Security. So for me, that's the way to think on the informality. Regarding the first question, I don't think the private sector has to invest in deployment of broadband technologies. So deployment of fiber optics can be done by governments. This is the blending part. This is the part where you can do public-private partnerships and so on. So because the investment can be funded through different mechanisms of governments. We know that the payback of digitalization and reducing the digital divide in rural areas could be huge. But unless we deploy that network, the core network, then we have a kind of a natural monopoly. The private sector won't be able to do it alone because there is significant fixed costs that we need to cover. But once you do that, the core of the success is how you deploy the competition for the delivery of the last mile. That's the core of the success. And there is a lot of experience that when you do competitive bids, you could get only a very small de-risking, a very small subsidy that you need to pay to the companies to be able to move. The second element is that companies, when they are exploring new markets, they don't normally do and collect new data. And that's another public good that we can provide to create information so that companies move closer to that data. That's what we are doing, for example, in our hand-in-hand initiative. But the final thing to understand is that access to digital technologies is not just the technology. You need capabilities. If you don't need how to read and write, then how you will use these technologies. And you also need content that is useful. If you don't have the useful content, then again, it's useless. Okay, so you will have the phones as an ornament and not as a real tool. And phones are becoming a tool of production. So we need to comply with the three elements. But yes, public sector has to play a role because there is a natural monopoly part that they need to cover a role and then promote competition when you have covered all those fixed costs. And that competition should allow have better access and lower prices for farmers to be able to access to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maximo, for addressing those questions. Vladimir, any other question from the floor? I suggest we take one or two max more, and then we release Maximo to his duties.
There is one final question, and I will just read the question directly. In light of the UN Food System Summit that is upcoming, we know that international organizations and national governments have a large role to play. Where is room for the input of youth?
That's an excellent question. Yes, there is a role to play for everybody. This is a huge challenge. No? The situation that we face today is far to what we need to have 9 years from now in the 2030 SDG indicators. So we need every input possible to create these new ideas and especially moving out of the box to try to find solutions. Simple problems like food loss and waste reduction, how we can do it, what are the new ways in which we can achieve that? Because it's not only an issue of technology, of supply, of production, of storage, it's also an issue of changing behavior, and consumers and youth can play a crucial role. Like in my previous work, my job was to give information to kids to change the behavior of parents. You can change the behavior of consumption of parents. It's more difficult for parents to change your consumption behavior than for you to change the consumption behavior of your parents. So again, many roles you can play. But in the structure of the summit, there is dialogues from the youth. There is a group of youth which is working intensively in dialogues. In our case, you can link through the WFF, the World Food Forum. So just search worldfoodforum.org. IFAD is part of it, WFP is part of it, and many agencies are part of it. And then you can participate in the different dialogues. What we are trying to do is to bring inputs to the pre-summit here in Rome in 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, and then to the summit, and then to continue the movement of youth to change and transform the agri-food system until the first week of October, where we have a series of events here, hoping with a very nice concert at the end, so that we can start creating this movement. No? The idea is to create the summit more than making decisions, because it's not a government agreed summit, is to create a movement of change that can end in decisions at the country level, because at the end of the line, the changes have to happen at the country level and not at the overall global level. So the aggregation will create the bigger change, but we need all the help possible. And yes, you have a channel of action that you can play through the summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maximo. Thank you for your availability. And we're now going to continue with our session. And we really thank you for participating and for making this very lively presentation. Thank you, Maximo. So now let's continue the presentation of the session, the opening remark, with a short presentation by a roundtable discussion with the representative of the 3 universities in Rome. So I want to give the floor first to Professor Pierluigi Montalbano, who is Professor of International Economic Policy and Development Economics at Sapienza University of Rome, and also Associate Faculty at the Department of Economics of University of Sussex. Is chair-holder of the Jean Monnet Chair of Rethinking EU Trade Policy for Development, and also director of a master program on migration and development at Sapienza University. Pierluigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sara. Maximo already entered into the core of the debate, giving us very stimulating insights for me and for all the participants. However, I'm here in my capacity of Sapienza representative, so I need to step back at the level of opening remarks. And so let me say that it's an honor to be here on behalf this morning on behalf of Sapienza University, and I'd like to give a warm welcome to all the participants to this great virtual event. As Sara Savastano reminded us, this is part of the activities of MOU that Sapienza, together with the other 2 Rome-based state universities, Tor Vergata and Roma 3, signed with IFAD. And let me thank one more time for this Sara Savastano that strongly supported this agreement since the beginning. This MOU aims to foster the quality of the research activities to reach better evidence-based policymaking. And Sarah just announced the availability of new grants for supporting research activities of students, highlighting also the importance of impact evaluation practices. But also the MOU aims also to foster the quality of training for students interested in development studies. That's why GMUN is so important for us, since it represents one of the best practices of our joint effort in this direction. In this respect, I'm very happy that so many students replied positively to this call. I acknowledge that also this year there is a strong representation from Sapienza University of Rome. I'm particularly proud of it. This is a very good sign of the strong interest of young people in international issues and policies, and is important in relation to what I would like to stress during this brief speech. Let me thank also Carlotta Vicario, who coordinated this from Sapienza side. I know she made a lot of effort to disseminate this among our students. Let me add a brief statement regarding the importance of participating at the global model. I know that you today will start discussing and proposing alternative solutions to a wide range of important issues that span from migration, social inclusion, the rights of indigenous people, climate change. In his keynote speech, Maximo introduced an additional set of important issues for system uncertainty, risk, resilience. These are global issues, but with strong local implications. And all these should be part of a more general effort at the global level to foster the so-called global citizenship education. That is, empowering people to understand that these global issues are important for daily life and to become active citizens and promoters of a more peaceful, inclusive, secure, sustainable societies. This is a true challenge for international community. We need to overcome the perception that global phenomena and international policies should be taught only in super specialist courses, in massive programs aimed for future members of diplomatic services or officials in international organizations. Rather, this knowledge should be part of the common background of the general audience of informed citizens and voters, indeed. This is now well noted. The target 4.7 in Agenda 2030 states that we should ensure all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, education for sustainable development, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship, appreciation of cultural diversity, and culture's contribution to sustainable development. It is important, however, to think about the right instruments to do that. And moving to the instruments, let me recall that this 20th of July would be 20 years since the 23-year-old Carlo Giuliani was shot dead during clashes with police in the occasion of the G8 summit in Genoa. Carlo dreamed of a different world and surely fought for good reasons. But did he do it in a proper way? Probably not. What I'm saying is that we don't need to give up fighting for our values and dream for a better world. We need to keep passions and feelings, but we should express them using the appropriate channels. Civil society international organizations should not be seen as separate bodies, but as a common expression of collective actions aimed to overcome individual solutions. Institutions, international institutions, are the right places to discuss global issues. Elected officials are the representatives of the civil society and should be trained for this. And their activity should be evaluated using the appropriate tools. I would say even more that words like civil society international organization do not mean anything without the elected officials' work aimed at finding possible equilibrium, viable solution to the most important global issues, notwithstanding the obvious presence of conflicts of interest. In this respect, GMUN is key. It is the right way of doing. It teaches how to build up joint effort towards consensus. It is a stepping stone to pave the way for a new generation of elected officials that hopefully will be able to really establish the hope for new world order and provide a true sustainable development as depicted by the Agenda 2030. I know that we are running late. I would like just to say that there are challenges ahead. Max already mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, the fact that the pandemic hurted disproportionately people. Labor-intensive jobs have been more exposed, more vulnerable to the crisis. So the poorest, whose main production factor asset is physical labor, have been particularly hit. We need restructuring value chains, moving to a more resilient food system, provide nutrition food for the poor, reorganizing education, the global attainments. So there is a lot of work to do. But exceptional times need exceptional responses, provided by hopefully exceptional women and men. So I think it is your turn. Let me wish you all, also from the Sapienza side, all the best for a very productive experience. Let me express the hope that we'll be able together to really build a different, hopefully more inclusive, resilient world for the future. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Pierluigi, for your words, for reminding us G20, another very important policy event where the role of youth is crucial to shape our future. And now I'm very happy to give the floor to Professor Silvia Nenci. Professor Silvia Nenci teaches economic policy at the Department of Economics of Roma Tre University. She is also the coordinator of the Master in Environment and Development Economics at the Department of Economics of Roma Tre. She's member of the Doctoral School in Economics, member of the Master in Human Development. If you want to invest in your education, please follow Professor Nenci, because she, for all her appointment, and she's also author of many important papers published into academic journal. And without further ado, Silvia, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Sarah, for your kind presentation. On behalf of the Department of Economics at Roma Tre University, I wish you a very warm welcome to the GMUN 2021. It's a really pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to talk to you, who are more than 150 students, brilliant minds and citizens of the world. beginning, I have strongly supported this initiative, encouraging students from my university to participate actively in its organization, because I believe in the importance and merits of this kind of initiative as an excellent opportunity for training and personal growth. But first of all, let me thank IFAD in the person of my colleague and friend, Sara Savastano, for her extremely valuable support in organizing this event and the strong cooperation with the Rome-based universities. And thanks to the IFAD staff and all the students from Roma Tre and the other universities who organized this event with passion and true commitment. And this initiative is a concrete example of cooperation among institutions that are in principle competitors, but that share a common purpose to promote higher education, research, and the advancement of science. And universities nurture the hopes of the world in solving challenges that cross borders, in unlocking new knowledge, building cultural, political understanding, and in modeling environments that promote dialogue and debate. The GMUN initiative is also a fruitful example of cooperation between the academia and international organizations, IFAD in this case, that has already promoted several interesting activities, as already underlined by Sara, and achieved important results. And it is precisely from this word, cooperation, that I would like to start my brief message to you. Looking at the GMUN goals, we can read, educating participants about world issues and promoting peace and the work of the United Nations through cooperation and diplomacy. And allow me to make the following reflections. During the last decades, the world has become dramatically interdependent. This because of the increasing exchanges of flows of goods, capital, people, innovation, and technological changes between countries. Maximo showed the interaction of the agri-food system with other systems, health, economic and governance, market, infrastructure, and services. And this is an excellent example of this interdependence. But increasing interdependence is not a panacea in and of itself. Actual benefits depend on a range of other critical factors, including macroeconomic policy, business and regulatory environment, legal regime, quality of infrastructure, quality of public services, including education, the complements to which Maximo referred. Interdependence poses significant challenges that we have to be addressed by governments, civil society, and other policy actors at the national and international levels. Governing this global complexity was not and is not an easy task. We know that formal and informal institutions were created after the Second World War with the aim of guiding and supporting these global processes, each in its specific specialization field. But these institutions, especially the multilateral ones, cannot work well if they are not based on a fundamental principle, which is that of cooperation. And the facts that are happening today in the world, but in the economic and political fields, highlight some difficulties in achieving and preserving this global cooperation. Maximo has already underlined some of them. I'm thinking about the health crisis, the COVID crisis, that is the greatest test of global solidarity in generations. And this pandemic calls for a strong, coordinated international response. The emergency is also environmental. We must enhance our efforts to tackle climate change and make our economies more sustainable. And the third challenge is the economic recovery, because the pandemic caused the worst economic crisis in the world since the World War II. So recovery of a strong and stable world economy is now a fundamental priority. So all these facts highlight the need for a strong multilateral approach. Cooperation is a global good. That is why it cannot be taken for granted, but needs collective action. And it means putting the common interest before the personal one, and this requires a strong political will, perseverance, and commitment. And I believe this is one of the most important lessons you can draw from this GMUN event. And the second word I would like to highlight is awareness. You have to be smart to succeed in life and your career, but being smart does not immunize you from living unconsciously. An unconscious life is driven by habits, fixed beliefs, second-hand opinions, and old conditioning. What awareness brings is freedom from fixed beliefs and habits and conditionings. Being more aware will also make you smarter in the negotiation, because a conscious person makes better choices than an unconscious person. Being aware citizens, informed and qualified experts in the respective fields are essential ingredients, not only to understand the decisions your nation makes, but also to understand how those changes affect politics and economics, that is basically our lives. So I can think of better goal for every person as well as the entire human race. Studying, enlarging your knowledge, adopting a critical view, exchange opinions and discuss with others. All this is the right antidote for escaping the traps and making informed decisions. Hence, the second lesson you can draw for the participation in this initiative is that good governance involves informed and participatory decision-making. The seemingly intractable problems of our interdependent world, from poverty to climate change to COVID-19, can be solved, but only with informed participation of a global citizenship cooperating toward global solutions. We can no longer simply outsource to governments the tremendous responsibility of confronting these issues. Instead, as a responsible global citizens, we are all called to inform ourselves about the issues, then inform others, and finally get involved in seeking solutions. So to conclude, I wish you to be aware and cooperative global citizens to ensure a better world for future generations. Thank you for attention, and good luck in the GMUN 2021.
Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you to you and Pierluigi also to raise the importance of those very important issue about ethics and about civil servant and responsibility in of the young for our life. And now I would like to leave the floor to Furio Camillo Rosati, Professor Furio Camillo Rosati, who is Professor of Public Finance at the University of Rome Tor Vergata, the Faculty of Economics. He received a BA in Economics from the University of Rome, Faculty of Rome, and Master of Science in Economics, a philosophy doctor in economics, both from the London School of Economics and Political Science. In addition to his position at the University of Rome Tor Vergata, Professor Rosati is currently the director of CHASE, Center for Economics and International Studies, and also the director of IFAD, the Italian Center for International Development. The role of Professor Rosati for international development is therefore crucial, as well as his past appointment as project director for Understanding Children's Work, an interagency research initiative on child labor involving the ILO, UNICEF, and the World Bank. So now, Professor Rosati, I leave you the floor for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. After this introduction, I'm supposed to say something intelligent that I will not. But thank you very much for all these kind words. And let me first of all tell you that I joined my colleague from the other two universities in thanking IFAD for supporting this initiative, which is now in the third year, and also that I am very happy to see the enthusiasm with which the students participate in this initiative. Given that we are very, very late, I will be extremely brief in my remarks, also because then Professor Piga will talk a little bit more of the linkages with the BA here in Tor Vergata. Many things have been stressed during the introduction, your introduction, Sara, the speech of Massimo, the introduction of my two colleagues. I would just like to raise a further point that after 20 years of working in the UN, I came to realize is crucial beyond all the very fascinating and essential elements of technicalities that have been discussed today. And this is the importance and the complexity of working through a multilateral approach. I would like very much that the students in this exercise not only would appreciate the depth of knowledge and the experience that the international agencies and the UN in general have developed. I also would like them to really become familiar with what means to work in a multilateral approach with national governments. I think there is an intuition of the potential benefits of multilateralism, and this should be hopefully become even more clear to the students after this exercise. I also would like them to realize the cost of multilateralism in terms of continuous negotiation, of respect for the partner or clients, depending on the slang used by the different agencies, in designing intervention policies and strategies of development. I think understanding very well how to work with national government with the multilateral approach is an essential part of really supporting the UN process of achieving, the goal that is set, the world has set for itself. So I really hope, and I'm pretty sure that through this exercise, the students will come to appreciate both the importance of the multilateralism approach and also its cost, because only by appreciating its cost and complexities, then they can really actively and better participate to a multilateral effort in whichever area they decide to work. With this, I leave the floor to whoever comes after me, and let me thanks again personally you, Sara, all the team of IFAD who have been working really with commitment on this. And of course, also our colleagues in the other two universities who devoted a lot of effort to realization of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Furio. And yes, the role of the member states is crucial. I just would like to give just an idea for you to know, for you young students, what's the difference between an institution like IFAD, who is a UN agency, and other international organizations like the World Bank and the IMF, is that the member states who are donors of those institutions are owners of the World Bank and the IMF because they contribute to the work by giving a percentage of their GDP, while in the case of IFAD, they give voluntary contribution, as also in the case of other UN agencies. And this makes really a big difference. And this also means that, as Professor Rosati was saying, that the interaction with the member state, the interaction with the local government is of fundamental importance in order to increase the welfare of, at the end, the beneficiaries of our activities, which in the case of IFAD are the small-scale producer. But now stop, because you will have all the opportunities to discuss those items during your 3 days of work. And last but not least, I'm very happy to give the floor to the volcano of ideas, Professor Gustavo Piga, who is also the leader of this global model United Nations that he proposed to undergo a few years ago. Gustavo is an Italian economist. He's professor of political economy at the University of Rome Tor Vergata. He had a PhD in economics at Columbia University, and he taught accounting and finance at the Department of Economics of Columbia University for a few years. Then he wrote The Contentious Derivatives derivatives in public debt management in 2001, and edited Revisiting Keynes with Lorenzo Pecchi for MIT Press, and the Handbook of Procurement with Nicola Dimitri and Giancarlo Spagnolo for Cambridge University Press. In 2002-2005, he was the president of CONSIP and is currently member of the Scientific Committee of the Italian Congressional Budget Office and director of the Global Governance undergraduate degree at the University of Rome, Tor Vergata, who is also gave birth to the Global Model United Nations that we're all attending today. Gustavo, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So good morning to you all. I'm very honored to address you today for this third edition of the Global MUN. I'm grateful to IFAD for its critical support for this idea that was generated probably 4 years ago in the minds and brains of a group of global governance students at Tor Vergata University meeting in some dark, small room of their campus. I am delighted that IFAD played such a critical role in expanding this initial idea to our partner institutions of Rome, University Sapienza, and Roma Tre. Global MUN is a global good. And I think that thanks to modern technologies, its marginal cost is basically zero. One more student attending brings benefits to the world community and is now so cheap to accommodate. And I hope really that more and more institutions like Sarah wants will join us in future years. But we should not discount, I think, what was needed to bring us to enlarge this community. Like often it happens with global goods, coordination and a focal point. This is why the role of IFAD that was played and plays needs so much to be recognized. I think that without IFAD, we would have found the cost of enlarging it very, very large. So thank you, Professor Savastano, for being the leader of this constant growth of our endeavor. Now, the word growth makes me think, growth of what? What is the output? What is the impact of GMUN? I know that much has been said about it, so I'm not going to stay too long on this, but I first wanted to reiterate some points on this. What is the impact? I think that the notion we all share, at least in global governance, is that diversity makes you brighter. There are many experiments out there done by sociologists especially that show that all over the world, questionnaire responses when offered to two different communities, one made of same nationalities, one made of global groups with different passports, turn out to be more correct and exact when passports are different and varied, thanks to the cognitive friction that diversity generates within groups. But I do believe also that diversity does not just make you brighter, it can make you better. But to make you better, it requires a sense of direction. Diversity is not a nice thing. It's not an easy thing. It's not a cute thing. Diversity, when put in a common room, could lead to wars. But if we focus ahead of time on clear goals and rules of the game, it usually leads us with a great likelihood to a better world. This is why GMUN, I think, will not only make you brighter, but also better, which is a critical issue for your future. So now I said the word, your future. And this is the second thing I wanted to talk about today. It reminds me, this word, of why we are here, and especially why, without knowing it, you have created GMUN. GMUN is, in my mind, a bridge. It's not my bridge, it's your bridge to the future. Not all of you will work in the end in global institutions, in development agencies. You should not be disappointed by that. Some of you, even though you still don't know it, will become entrepreneurs, bureaucrats in the best sense of the word, bakers of new types of bread, fathers, mothers, caring individuals for someone. What unites you all today here is the desire to build beautiful things and to start walking on your bridge towards the future. Many of you are at the end of their undergraduate degree or graduate, like Vladimir and Luana. Thank you guys, by the way, for this incredible job with GMUN. Vladimir and Luana, by the way, will graduate tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. Congratulations on a fantastic achievement. The university 3 years ago was your bridge to the future. It is now a straight jacket for you. You need to open your wings again and fly further away from us. And when you do that, like you're doing today with being here in GMUN, a whole world of opportunities awaits for you, notwithstanding your fears, understandable fears for what comes next. The world that opens in front of you is very, very different from the one that I faced when I left my bachelor more than 30 years ago. It is a more global world, so many more opportunities for sure. People say yes, but also more competition in a very worried way. And indeed, many people's lives have been affected negatively by the globalization trends. But I believe you are very well insured against these risks. You are young, you shape the next world to come. You know and determine its new features rather than trying to resist its wind to survive as older generations do. You are pushed ahead with this wind, just like a sailing boat. But to sail in an ocean with a strong wind also requires some basic skills that you need to cultivate. First of all, don't go for the ocean alone. The value of team, a diverse team, to which, by the way, with this GMUN, you're already showing your capacity to be embedded in, will be fundamental for you. You are asked not to compete with others, but to cooperate with others. Competition comes from Latin, competere, running fast together, together. We often forget that. If you want to compete with someone, please remember that you are engaged in a marathon, a very long race, your life, 50 to 70 more years. And in a marathon, who do you compete against? You compete against yourself. So allow yourself to improve by being gentle, understanding, curious, even or especially when it is the hardest, in rough times, and cherish the diversity of views in your group. It is not a threat, it's your insurance. But in a group, you will be asked to contribute. You will be interesting for the group in that you're capable of helping the group to achieve its common goal. Now, one thing I want to say very clearly, at least once in your life, you will fall, not for your fault, in the wrong group that will have the wrong goals. It will be rare, but it will happen to you for sure. That day, don't be scared to say a strong no, I disagree, and leave. The short-term cost of that will be compensated much more by a very big long-term payoff called your reputation, fundamental for your future life. Obviously, there is a big thing. Your contribution to society or to your group will be shaped by your skills and your knowledge. Should you be a Federer or a Tiger Woods? You know that Tiger Woods, when he was 3 years old, was told by his father that he should play golf, and he started playing golf 3 years. He specialized in golf when he was 3 years old. Roger Federer had his mother who was a tennis player, and she says, no, you're not going to play tennis player until you've played all the sports, and then you decide. So what will you be, a Federer or a Tiger Woods? It will depend on so many things, but do not worry. There is nothing wrong about being either a Tiger Woods or a Roger Federer. We need both for a beautiful societal life. Certainly globalization, with the creativity and innovation it generates, is making an interdisciplinary education always more and more fruitful as an insurance policy against abrupt change. This is why we have created global governance, knowing that global problems, things that happen very far away from you, but that you want to be solved, are becoming more and more important and in need of interdisciplinary teams. Still, whatever you choose, you need still knowledge. And knowledge will come from studying and experiencing with awareness, like Sylvia said. Many of our students refrain from entering university masters immediately and prefer to take a gap year after the graduation to learn from the real world. No matter what you will do, please do remember these words. These next 3 to 5 years are going to be the most critical years in your life. Give it all. Give it all. Respecting values, resisting, walking one step at a time with patience. You may not know it, but you're climbing right now the Everest of your life. And the closer you get to the peak, the harder 1 more meter will be. Study very hard in these 5 years. Work hard with intensity and purposefulness. And I want to leave you with this. Once you are at the top of the Everest in 3 to 5 years, effort done, I promise to you, 2 things will happen. First, the beauty of the valley below you, of what is waiting for you, the many, many opportunities of a global world ready to embrace you. And please don't forget the walk down from the peak for 50 to 70 years, walking across the green valleys below. You will find yourself to wonder sometime, why is it so easy? Why to me? Why all this beauty? And make no mistake, it wasn't easy. The rewards that you will reap for the last 50 years of your life will strongly depend on the huge efforts and cost you have sustained in these next 5 years. So I wish you good luck. I wish to thank you for making GMUN possible, which means making a better world more possible. GMUN is your next step toward the peak of your personal Everest. And I commend you very strongly for that. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Gustavo, for this inspiring speech. Perfect way to close this opening ceremony, long ceremony, but important ceremony. I've been notified by the organizer that the students have to start their work. Again, thank you to all of you and all the students, most importantly, to Antonella, to Vladimir, to all the staff of IFAD, to the students of, and to the organizer of La Sapienza, of Roma Tre University that have collaborated to make this happen. It's thanks to your strong commitment that we're here and we will continue to be in the following years. So I wish you really the best of luck for your future and for the coming 3 years for now. And then you will reconvene for the closing ceremony with another colleague from IFAD who will make a speech. Good luck to everybody, and us, we can disconnect while the student can stay connected. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye, good luck.
Goodbye to all the speakers. And
Bye.
once again, thank you to the professors and thank you to the wonderful staff from IFAD. So for all our participants and for the other ones who are joining us, this will